Good morning or good afternoon to who is with us on WebEx and to who is now joining us on Facebook Live. The Geneva Environment Network has the pleasure to welcome you today virtually for our, I would say, regular chemicals and waste briefings ahead of major negotiations that were initially planned to take place last year and this year. For those who wouldn't yet know our platform, let me briefly mention that we are a network of more than 100 institutions and secretariats based in Geneva that make this region one of the global hubs for environmental governance. Administrated by the United Nations Environment Programme and supported by Switzerland, we organize various networking activities, including regular multi-stakeholder roundtables and briefings on major environmental trends. Geneva plays a key role in stepping up efforts to address the pollution crisis, with the presence here of the 4 chemicals and waste conventions administered by the United Nations Environment Programme, as well as its chemicals and health branch, and also numerous other key UN system organizations and secretariats supporting efforts to limit our exposure to toxic substances and tackle pollution. I will soon let you in company of our co-chairs and the main moderator of this event, who will guide you throughout this session. Before, let me remind you that the documents presented today, the summary, as well as the video of the event, will be made available on the webpage of this event. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to Bruno Pozzi, the Director for the Pan-European region of the United Nations Environment Programme, who will moderate the event and will also introduce you to our guests as they speak. Bruno, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Diana, and thank you very much to the Geneva Environment Network for organizing this session, this briefing on chemicals and waste, which is a regular feature of the GEN agenda. And let me once again as well express my thanks to the Swiss Confederation for the support it gives to the Geneva Environment Network, which is hosted by UNEP, but supported by the Confederation. We've got today a very interesting panel, and it's really an honor for me to moderate it. And I'll just take 2 minutes before passing the floor to my colleagues on this important agenda of chemicals and waste, because as you know, our world is facing a triple planetary crisis. We know it in our sector, and more we see that outside of the environmental bubble, people really realize that pollution, climate change, biodiversity are intertwined crises that are intertwined, first of all, but also man-made, and that the solution will come from man with help from nature. They definitely, nature-based solution will play a role, but we need to address them as one, as humanity, and therefore the answer is in multilateralism. We know as well that the science will guide our actions, so we need a science-based approach, and I think this is what we'll hear again today. We need to transform the way we produce, the way we consume, so that sustainability becomes at the center of our economic models, and therefore we need to change our economic model, and definitely with the chemical industry and with the chemical science, there is a lot we can do to achieve these goals of having a better planet, restoring ecosystems, invest in nature, and at the end, making peace with nature and be the transformation that the planet is calling for, and our youth, the future generations are calling for. Pollution, as I said, its links with chemicals is clear, but also the link with health are clear nowadays, and we need international processes to look at this, to look at the way we use the power of chemicals and the science that we've got around chemicals at its best. And this is what my colleagues in this panel are doing on a daily basis, and therefore you will hear from them what their response suggestions and forward-looking opinion are. With this, I think I'll stop. And if I am not wrong, Diana, the next speaker then will be Rolf.
Thank you very much, Bruno, for this very succinct but to the point introduction. Excellencies, colleagues, participants, a very good morning to you and welcome to this very specific briefing. I will get straight to the point, and Bruno has already highlighted the overarching framework under which our reflections are anchored in. And I just wanted to highlight that we will be celebrating the World Environmental Day very soon. And the theme, one of the things that Bruno has mentioned is peace with nature. And in fact, when it comes to chemicals and waste, this is very important. Sometimes we ignore the amount of land that is polluted with waste. In fact, I was just watching a documentary in Europe, and the amount of illegal dump sites there is astonishing. They were using, drones to survey the land, and drones could easily pick those up. And it was amazing the amount of illegal waste areas that are located, whether in the forests, in the urban areas, in mangroves, along the coastlines, in some areas of rivers where the flow is not very high. And I just want you to transpose this same situation in developing countries where the situation is much, much worse, and the amount of areas of land that are covered. So we need to reclaim those areas. We need to let the environment breathe, allow those areas that are polluted with chemicals and waste to reforest again, for the animals to return, for species to be ever present among us. As spring has come and summer has come, I'm so blessed where I live with the increasing amount of birds and different species of birds that I've noticed. I've been living here for the last 7 years, and this year has been really exceptional in terms of the species of birds that have appeared on my on my veranda and in the home. So just to tell you and to share with you that clearly we humans have a big impact on the environment, and clearly when we withdraw from the environment, the animals and the biodiversity come up in so many ways. So let's embrace this situation, especially afforded to us, yes, by the crisis of COVID-19, but I think it sends home a very important message that it's time for us to really make peace with nature and seek how we can continue surviving and benefiting from this planet, while at the same time ensuring that we are also taking good care and we are good custodians of the natural environment. So today, my colleague will be presenting to you upcoming meetings, and also our upcoming online segment of the COPs in July, and also presenting you with a lot of other important information with regards to the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention. And in fact, as you probably know, we've already successfully run 2 regional preparatory meetings in Africa and the Central European region already, and so we have now the GROLAC and the Asian region in order to run the prep meetings there for the online COPs. I just wanted to highlight that we just celebrated over the weekend the Stockholm 20th anniversary. There's been quite a bit of information put on our website, also on social media such as Facebook, Twitter, and I invite you to support, like, and also make contributions or comments on whether we have made progress in the last 20 years or whether we have been indeed sleeping on our laurels, as they say. I think it's important that we do reflect on the importance of the Stockholm Convention, since it deals with the most toxic of chemicals that man has produced during our short passage on planet Earth. And here I note that DDT was one of the most toxic, and everybody asks me, why are we phasing out DDT? I always say because it's very good at what it does. It kills everything. And that is not only insects, but also human beings and other animals. So that is why we have to strive to eliminate DDT from our planet once and for all. As you know, we've had a lot of projects and initiatives in different countries. We have the DDT network as well, but as you know, some countries still are insisting on using DDT for the control of malaria, despite the many alternatives currently available. And I'm hoping that those countries will decide very soon to eliminate DDT from its use, and that will bring us to a zero level of DDT in the world. In any case, the only company that is producing DDT will very soon cease. That's what we've been told, producing DDT. That means that will be the last, manufacturer of DDT stopping to produce DDT. And this is just one example of where I put Stockholm on the dartboard and say whether we have actually nailed it or not. We also launched over the weekend together with our partners, the Minamata Convention, a joint report on biodiversity and chemicals and waste. This is a very important report. Right now, the Insights report is available, both websites of Minamata and the BRS Secretariat. And I invite you to have a look at those because it attempts to provide a lot of clarity on what are the linkages between the chemicals and waste MEAs and of course the biodiversity MEAs. And I hope it will help you also in the negotiations for biodiversity related conventions as well, and ensure that the issue of pollution, chemicals and waste are also reflected there. And as you know, as I started my introduction on really the relationship between us, humans creating pollution, and when we reduce that pollution and how nature actually bounces back. So I will stop here for now, and I would like to thank the Swiss as always for being a very supportive host and supporting BRS in all its programs, and of course other donors as well, and also for supporting Jen and to enable us to have these sessions with you during the year, and in particular this session here. Thank you very much, and over to you, Bruno.
Thanks a lot, Rolf, for these introductory remarks, and indeed, happy birthday, if I may say, to the Stockholm Convention. And every time I hear about DDT, Monica, sorry for adding one sentence. Every time I hear about DDT, I remember that as a school kid, and it's a long time ago now, I learned that DDT was a killer and should be we should get rid of it. And this, a few decades later, we're still fighting. But I hear from you, Rolf, that we are now really on the right track to get rid of this very dangerous chemical. Monica, over to you. And Rolf has kindly also mentioned the joint work that exists and the strong coordination. So please.
Yes, thank you so much, and good day to everyone. And let me start by appreciating Diana and the Geneva Environment Network, and for having me for the event and for organizing the chemicals and waste briefings. So dear Excellencies, parties, colleagues, Bruno, Rolf and Felix, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to report to you on the recent decision of the Bureau of the fourth meeting of the Conference of the Parties on the format of the upcoming COP4. The Bureau agreed that following the UNEA model, that the Minamata Convention COP will be held in two parts. An online segment over 1st to 5th November this year, and an in-person segment in March next year. And as you can imagine, this is a significant agreement for the convention, as it is for other MEAs in relation to holding virtual COPs. And it does signify the importance our parties and regions really pay to continuing the work to address pollution crisis, and more specifically to address pollution by mercury that is affecting the health of human health and the environment in both developed and developing countries. So let me here also express my appreciation to the Bureau for their consultations in the region and for the unanimous support to the option that has now been agreed. And let me also underscore the role of our president, Ms. Rosa Ratnavati from Indonesia, in reaching this agreement. Indonesia has been very generous to extend their presidency to the next year and to also offer hosting in-person segment of COP. In their considerations, there were a number of issues that were taken into account. One is to keep as short time as possible between the two segments of the COP to keep momentum. Also to strategically link the in-person segment of COP to second segment of UNEA and to the celebrations of the 50th anniversary of UNEP. And thirdly, to try to avoid any potential overlap with major international meetings that are being planned for the remaining quarters of the year. And from the presidency side, one important consideration was that Indonesia is planning to secure a number of venues for international meetings during the next year throughout the country. And they are offering one of such a safe venue for hosting Minamata Convention. In these considerations by the Bureau, and there was also a discussion about what kind of outcomes we can expect from the in virtual or online segment of the COP. And this is an issue that is being considered by all MEAs that are facing the need to have an online COP. And we have all different needs in the Minamata Convention. On our side, the aim is to agree at the online COP on a complete program of work and budget for the next year, but also for the COP and the parties to be informed and briefed on a number of issues, and that includes the GEF8 replenishment, the important issue for the convention of reporting on all articles of the convention, which is due by the end of this year, and also related to effectiveness evaluation. And my colleague Claudia Tenhabe will give you some further details about this and other work items. Let me also, of course, recognize that we all face the issue of connectivity to the meeting. So the Secretariat will be developing recommendations to identify effective way of conducting online meetings, including or in particular with respect to the connectivity, internet connectivity. And here there are some actions that we, the Secretariat, will do, but we'll also be recommending what it is the parties can do themselves to overcome any actual or potential connectivity issues. And we will also be working in putting forth recommendations to identify actions in case the in-person segment cannot be organized due to the reasons associated to COVID. So of course, naturally, there will be a process to monitor the situation. And I would like at that point in time to express my great appreciation for all the support that we have received from all other MEAs. I mean, everyone was very generous in sharing their knowledge, information, and approaches, including from BRS, SAICEM, UNEP, from CBD Secretariat, Ozone Secretariat. We are really a network of connected MEAs, and it is also my hope that through organizing our COP, we would also be contributing with lessons learned and experiences that will help other MEAs to move their processes forward in these still exceptional times. You may also note that our COP will be proceeded with the 15th Conference of the Parties under the Convention on Biological Diversity, which is on 11th to 24th of October in Kunming, China. But it will also be held at the same time as the 26th Conference of the Parties of the Framework Convention on Climate Change in Glasgow. And this links to the study that Rolf has kindly mentioned, that both our conventions have been carried out to collect scientific evidence on the linkages between chemicals and waste and biodiversity. And for the Minamata Convention, as for other conventions, these links are profound. By implementing that convention on mercury, we can protect and restore ecosystems. We can reduce emissions and releases of mercury from various sources and thereby improve the status of fish stocks, but also improve the ecological status of fish for the sake of the nature itself. And this could, for instance, be done by reducing emissions and releases from various sources, but also by formalization of the artisanal small-scale gold mining, which is a sector that takes the space and land for their activity and takes it from the natural environment. So the links are very strong, and equally they are strong for climate change. And this is the second study that we are working together on linkages between chemical waste and climate change. And in respect to mercury, whatever can be achieved with regard to climate change will positively benefit the convention. It would prevent the emission and releases of mercury, both anthropogenic and natural, and in a big magnitude. So this link is equally strong. So, I'm ending on that note. This is a little bit what you, Bruno, started, that these links are not only these links simply come from what we know about the world and how it does function, and it does warrant the closer cooperation, better integration in the future. And as the last word, let me inform you that the Indonesian mission in Geneva will be organizing a briefing about upcoming COP. So they would like to share about their planning and what it is that they are going to do to ensure safe and effective hosting of the COP in this year and the next year. So I would very much like to invite you to follow. The date will be released as soon as possible, but I hope that those who are interested will join this briefing to get some more details from the side of our presidency. But thank you so much, and over to you, Bruno.
Thanks a lot, Monica. And look, Diana had given us, for the three of us, 15 minutes. We've used 18. That's not too bad for people like the three of us who speak a lot, but have a lot to say indeed. And I think it was already a very rich introduction. Now we will go into the substantive self about what is happening in every convention, starting with Marilyn Beau, who is a program officer at the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Convention. And Marilyn, without further ado, you've got about 10 minutes less 3, but that's fine. Please.
Thank you very much, Bruno. Good morning, everybody, dear participants, excellencies. This is my pleasure today to present you some information about the upcoming meetings of the conferences of the parties to the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm conventions. I would like to start as you might know, due to the COVID-19 pandemic situation, it wasn't possible to organize the BRS COPs as they were originally planned. So they were planned, as face-to-face meetings in the last 2 weeks of July 2021. So given this situation, extensive consultations were undertaken by the 3 COP bureaus of the conventions, and this led to an agreement at the end of February, whereby the bureaus agreed to organize the meetings of the conferences of the parties in 2 segments, with a first segment that would take place online during 5 days at the end of July, so from the 26th to the 30th of July, 2021. And then there would be a second segment of the meetings, which would be conducted face-to-face. This segment would take place over 2 weeks in 2022. And there was already some kind of, there was some agreement that this face-to-face segment would be tentatively scheduled in June 2022 in Geneva. So the theme of the BRS COPs is global agreements for a healthy planet, sound management of chemicals and waste. And this theme will apply to both segments of the meetings. So now turning to the specific provisional agendas of the COP meetings. So those are mentioned on the slide. You have the document symbol of the agendas on the slide. And it is to be noted that the agendas of the meetings cover both segments of the meetings, because both segments are part of the same meetings. So you find indeed on this agenda items that will be considered in the online segment and also in the face-to-face segment. So for the online segment of the COPs, as per the agreement of the bureaus, the conferences of the parties would be expected to focus on the most sensitive or time-sensitive items, the most essential items during the online segment. So the bureaus have identified a number of prioritized agenda items to be considered during the online segment, and we will go into the details of those in a minute. Regarding the face-to-face segment, the COPs are therefore then expected to consider the items that were not considered during the face-to-face segment, or that were not concluded during the face-to-face segment, and were therefore deferred to the face-to-face segment. So on the slide, you can see the prioritized agenda items for the online segment, as well as what is expected in terms of outcomes from the online segment. The first set of prioritized agenda items relate to the program of work and budget. As you might know, the budget of the three conventions ends at the end of December of this year. Therefore, there is a need for the COPs to adopt a budget for next year. And so the bureaus have asked the Secretariat to prepare for the consideration of the online segment an interim budget for 2022. And then, therefore, the COPs would be expected to consider this interim budget for 2022, and also to adopt 3 harmonized decisions on this interim budget. There will be also a supplementary budget in order to allow the conduct or the convening of meetings that could not take place as face-to-face in 2022, and to be taking place then as face-to-face in 2022. So that's for the first set of prioritized items. For the online segment, the second set of items relate to elections. So bureaus identify the need for the COPs to, at least for the Rotterdam and the Stockholm COP, to go ahead with some elections. For the Rotterdam COP 10, it would be for it to elect members of the compliance committee. And for the Stockholm COP 10, it would be for it to elect members of the Effectiveness Evaluation Committee. Those are 2 bodies under those 2 conventions that need to start their work in 2021 or early 2022, before the actual time where the face-to-face segment would take place. On elections for the 2 COPs, so for the Rotterdam and Stockholm COPs, there would be also the need to extend the terms of office of CRC and POPROC members, whose terms of office actually finishes before the face-to-face segment, and therefore the COP would be expected to extend their mandates or their terms of office until the closing of the COPs, meaning until the closing of the face-to-face segment. So the third set of agenda items that would be expected to be taken up during the online segment is venue and date of the face-to-face segment. So the COPs would be expected to agree on the venue and dates of the face-to-face segment in 2022. And finally, the last prioritized item, as identified by the Bureau, is an agenda item, is an item on the agenda of the Stockholm COP 10, which is on financial resources and mechanism to the Stockholm Convention. So here it's because of the ongoing GEF replenishment negotiations that would be completed early 2022. There was also the need for the Stockholm COP 10 to send something to the GEF to contribute to those negotiations. Therefore, the Bureau has agreed that the COP would be expected to forward to the GEF the reports that have been prepared in the intersessional work, and that it would also invite the GEF to take into account the information contained in those reports for the replenishment negotiations, and that would be pending a final decision on this matter that would be expected to be taken in the face-to-face segment in 2022. So on the slide, on the current slide, you find the tentative organization of work of the online segment, as was agreed by the 3 COP bureaus. So you indeed find that it's a 5-day meeting. So from Monday, 26th of July to Friday, 30th of July of this year. And the meetings will take place from 1 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. every day of the week. So it's a Geneva local time, so UTC +2. So it's about 4.5 hours of daily sessions. Monday, Friday would be plenary sessions of the COPs, meaning that there would be simultaneous interpretation in the 6 UN languages. And for that, we will be using the Interprefy meeting platform. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the middle, it is expected that there would be the meeting of the contact group on budget and program of work. So Monday, in a nutshell, there will be the traditional opening and adoption of the agendas. So this will be done in a sequential manner by the COP, and then the COP will hold joint sessions of their meetings where they will consider organization of work and credentials. And after that, they will be taking up those prioritized agenda items, as just mentioned, elections, program of work and budget, date and venue of the face-to-face segment, and then a specific session of the Stockholm COP10 on financial mechanism. When considering program of work and budget, it is expected that the COPs would then establish a contact group on budget, as just said, that would meet the 3 next days. Contact group usually work in English only, so we wouldn't be using Interprefy for the discussions of the contact group. We would be using WebEx, so there would be another link for that meeting. Then on the Friday, it would be expected that there would be convention-specific and joint sessions of the meetings of the COPs, during which the COPs would adopt any outstanding decisions, in particular the decisions on the program of work and budget. It will also adopt the reports on credentials and the reports of the meeting. At the end of the day, on Friday, the meetings would be suspended, and with the agreement that they would be reconvened during the days of the face-to-face segments that would also be agreed during the online segment. So for the online segment, for the establishment of credentials, the approach that was agreed by the bureaus is the same as in the past. So original credentials as well as copies of credentials in good order would be accepted. So when we mention copies of credentials, they can be electronic copies. Copies of credentials in good order will be accepted with the understanding that the original will be submitted as soon as possible. So in line with the practice, credentials and the rules of procedures, the credentials are to be issued by head of state or head of government or by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Regarding submission of credentials to the Secretariat, paper copies of credentials as well as e-copies of credentials are invited to be submitted by the 30th of June in order to facilitate the review of and the preparation of the credentials. If countries are not able to meet the deadline of 30th of June, then they can submit, they are invited or even required to submit electronic copies only of credentials by the Tuesday, 27th of July. So this is 6 p.m. So this is 24 hours after the opening of the meetings. This deadline is also built into the schedule of work, the tentative schedule of work for the online segment. There would be a model for credentials that is available to parties, and credentials can also be issued for the 3 meetings in one document. Regarding the specificities of having the meetings in 2 segments, so parties have the opportunity to issue credentials only for the online segment or for both segments. In the latter case, parties can provide an update on their credentials when we come closer to the dates of the face-to-face segments. This slide shows the main documents that are expected to be considered during the online segment. So I won't go into the details of those. It's just for your information. I wanted to indicate that given that the online segment is the start of the meeting, all the working documents of the meetings would be made available now, so 2 months before the start of the meetings, even for documents that will only be considered during the face-to-face segment in 2022. So that's why all documents are being available now. All the working documents are available now, and only specific ones will be expected to be considered in the online segment as listed on the slide. As per usual practice, all the working documents being prepared for the meetings contain a draft decision that assists in the discussions and in the negotiations, and parties obviously can make use of them. Regarding registration, so invitation letters to parties have been sent out. So the English version was sent out already a week ago, and French and Spanish versions just were recently sent out. A notification to observers to also register to the meetings will be sent out next Monday. The deadline for registration has been set to for the 18th of June, and it follows the same nomination process as for face-to-face meetings. So parties are invited to nominate one or more representatives for the meetings. The little difference compared to a face-to-face meeting is linked to the use of the meeting platform Interprefy. So this is only for the plenary sessions, but we have some limitations in terms of the number of participants that can ask and take the floor. Therefore, delegations would be invited to nominate or to designate one spokesperson per delegation who would be able then to request and take the floor during the plenary sessions on Interprefy. But this limitation is not there for the contact group on budget. We are using another platform that does not limit the number of participants that can speak. Similar to other meetings and in line with UNEP and BRS policies, the Secretariat will provide an exceptional support to eligible participants to help defray their communication costs to participate in the meetings. In addition to the plenary and contact group sessions, there would be also other meetings around the time of the online segment. There would be joint bureau meetings conducted in the morning prior to the sessions. Regional groups would also have the opportunity to organize meetings either prior or after the sessions, the official sessions of the meetings. They may approach the Secretariat for organizing such an online segment if they want to use the meeting platform of the Secretariat. And in addition to those meetings, there will be also opportunities to organize side events, 1 hour side events in the afternoons and evenings of the online segment. And you have the contact of the person should you be interested in applying for a side event. Preparation for the online segment is very important, as was mentioned by the COP bureaus. So we are conducting at the moment online regional preparatory meetings, as mentioned by Mr. Payet before. Regional meetings were conducted in Africa and Eastern Europe already in the last few weeks. Next week, there will be the regional preparatory meeting for GRULAC, and the week after for Asia Pacific. You might find additional information on those meetings on our website. And regional groups may wish also to approach the Secretariat if they wish to conduct additional regional meetings. We are ready to assist with that as well. An additional technical briefing will be organized on budget as per the request of the COP president. So this additional briefing will take place on the 24th of June. An invitation to join this briefing will be sent to parties in the coming days. As done in the past, we will also conduct global webinars in preparation for the meetings, and any additional information on the meetings might be found on the meeting website. And this is my concluding slide. Just to mention also looking ahead for the face-to-face segment of the meetings. Proposed dates for the meetings are from the 6th to the 17th of June 2022 with the venue of CICG in Geneva. As mentioned before, the dates and venue would be agreed by the COPs at the online segment. Arrangement for the high-level segment of the COPs will be further considered and agreed by the bureaus after the online segment. And as mentioned also, the theme will remain the same. Global agreements for healthy planets on management of chemicals and waste. Thank you so much. This concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention, and I remain available to answer any questions during the question and answer session. Thank you so much, Bruno.
Thanks a lot, really, for this complete overview and really, as you said in your conclusion, looking forward for those face-to-face meeting in 2022. But we see the work is going on, and that's really what is brilliant with our environmental convention and what UNEA has achieved as well. And we just can't waste time. We need to have things moving, and that's really what the COP and the BRS convention is doing by organizing the next online COP at the end of July. Claudia now is going to be our next speaker on the Minamata Convention, also I guess on what is coming up with COP4 and the future of the convention. Claudia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Bruno, and thank you to all my colleagues before and following from Monica's introduction to where we are heading and what's happening next for Minamata. Indeed, as Monica had outlined, COP4 will, just like UNEA and also like our BRS colleagues, COP, take part in two stages, in two segments. The first one will be an online segment in November, from the 1st to the 5th of November. Those were the original dates of COP4, so it is in that exact time slot that the online segment will take place, and then it will be followed by an in-person segment in Bali, Indonesia, also under the presidency of Indonesia, and the target date for that is the first quarter of 2022. So one small difference from UNEA and also our BRS colleagues is that the beginning and end of our meeting takes place over 4 months rather than a larger gap. But other than that, the modality is exactly the same. It is one single meeting, COP4 meeting, just in two segments. And we have started referring to it in this way as COP 4.1 and 4.2. So COP 4.1 is, of course, the one just at some days away, 157 days away. So we do have a little bit of time. A little bit more time than the others so far, but it's my great pleasure to give you just a bit of an overview of what will happen at COP 4.1. Just to say, the decision to make a 4.1 and 4.2 was also, of course, done by the Bureau with extensive consultation of national focal points during the months of April and May. And the outcome of that consultation was sent to all national focal points and stakeholders on the 30th of April. Sorry, the consultations were in April and March, in fact. And so if you wanted to look at the detail of that communication, you could see so on our website. This particular slide that you see now is a very important annex to that communication because it lays out really what will be done and what will be focused on at COP 4.1. The dates, as indicated, are from the 1st of November, Monday, to the 5th of November, Friday. And the first day, the third day, and the Friday are plenary sessions. In other words, what you see in gray are plenary sessions in all UN languages, and they will be taking place in 4-hour segments in the Geneva afternoon, while on the Tuesday and the Thursday, they will be times for contact group, in particular on program and budget. So much of what I'm going to be explaining here will sound very familiar because of Marilene's excellent outlay of how the BRS conventions are going about it. And in many ways, we are following very much the good practices they've put in place already. So we too will have our normal opening, and there will be some matters of organizational matter that would need to be addressed at the beginning. But there are 4 topics that have been decided to be of time-sensitive nature and that will be looked at in some detail or greater detail in 4.1. And I will start in some ways in reverse order, namely being to look at a portion of the agenda on the Global Environment Facility. As you know, it's a financial mechanism of the Minamata Convention and therefore a key part of the work of our parties to implement the obligations, and its 8th replenishment round is currently undergoing. And in fact, the planning round stretches this year and is more or less right in the middle of the intersectional time between COP 4.1 and 4.2. And so the messaging that will come from our COP to that particular round is important to capture as early as possible and therefore the discussion on this in November will be very, very pivotal. Also at 4.1 are matters of national reporting. For our parties, the full national reports are due at the end of this year. The short national reports were due at the end of 2019, and we have an excellent reporting rate of over 85% on that. And so we are hoping to have a very, very strong reporting rate, of course, also for the full reports, and are doing everything possible from the Secretariat side to support our parties in this regard. And therefore, the guidance for the national reporting will be brought more formally to the attention of all parties then. Third topic that will be addressed in some ways by 4.1 is our ongoing work on putting in place the arrangements for the effectiveness evaluation of the convention. This is a very special aspect of ensuring that our convention really achieves what it sets out to do, and there has been quite a lot of work at the party level on this, and we will bring this forward at this meeting. And lastly, but in no way least, because it's matters of operations, is the program of work and budget for the next biennium. And since it is foreseen that we will be able to have a meeting early next year, the program of work and budget that would be under consideration at 4.1 and 4.2 is, of course, for the entire biennium looking forward, that is 2022 and 2023. I also would like to draw your attention to the fact that we have received some amendment proposals to the convention. For those of you that follow this type of thing in detail, they have to be notified to all parties 6 months before the meeting opens. And so these amendment proposals were notified on the 30th of April to all parties and are available on our website. And just for those that are, like me, a bit nerdy and curious about what this is all about, I just want to point out these are proposals to Annex A, which are the products, mercury added products that are stipulated in our convention, the phase out of which or the phase down of which, and also Annex B, which are the processes that use mercury. And so 3 proposals have been put forward, one by the EU, both for amendments or additions to Annex A, products, and B, processes, and also by the Africa region, amendments to some products under Annex A, and also a way of work on dental amalgam under Annex A. And then also a proposal put forward by Canada and Switzerland, also for products under the Annex A. I would like to say that, would like to just point out that there are 3 proposals. They are not counter proposals. They are all additional and different ways of doing more and hopefully better, as the proponents are putting it, for our different annexes. Just to say in complement, this also comes because one of the intersessional aspects of our work has been a review that the convention text had required of looking at the products and processes that we are currently responsible for under Minamata, and excellent work has been done by the intersessional working group on this. And displayed on the right of this slide is the fact that you can have a look at their report, and they have worked on batteries, on lamps, on switches, on many things, and including a new area, namely satellite propellants. So if that hasn't hooked you on trying to find out more about Minamata, then I will try harder next time. But there are some very interesting things happening in all of these areas, and we will see how this will lead and grow our convention further, and also to support our parties in their ability to implement these. But moving more ahead, just as an overview, coming up therefore for the next months until we meet online on the 1st of November, and then hopefully in person in Bali early in 2022. The notification, as mentioned, has been sent out about this revised or new format, but the formal invitations are about to be sent out in June, and will contain, of course, the full agenda of COP4. And just like Marilyn outlined for the Stockholm, Basel, and Rotterdam conventions, the agenda covers the entire meeting. It is just a matter of some items will be spoken to in 4.1, whereas all the others, certainly the deeper items, will all be handled at 4.2. I'd also want to just point out that we will also have our online registration system opening from the 1st of August. And it's quite imperative that we have your registrations in the system, because it allows for your online access later in November, and all the access to relevant credentials and speaking opportunities, etc., etc. We will have a more detailed brief on all of those items a bit later in the year. So suffice to say for now that we are working on systems that are going to be able to make it as easy as possible for our parties to participate and to engage. But this online registration system will be quite important as the first gateway into all of that. Also, just to identify that, of course, while we are extremely happy to have 131 parties, the most recent one being Cambodia, we are certainly hopeful of more parties joining Minamata, and to have the instruments of ratification in by the 30th of July would allow a party to be part of the online segment from day one. And so just to put that on the radar, we have seen quite a few parties come in recently, so we are extremely happy to see again a good growing of our Minamata family. But to get to the sort of depth of it in terms of our work, just to alert that from the 2nd of August, all the budget and finance documents will be available online. And this is because of the special deadline on all of those matters of 90 days before the beginning of the meeting. And then from September, all of our meeting documents will also be posted online. All of the documents, regardless of whether they would be considered only at COP 4.1 or 4.2. I'll show you in a minute a little bit more, but we will have preparatory meetings, especially to help, as Monica said, to help ensure that the fact that we cannot meet in person is not too much of an obstacle. We will try to have, we would like to impart as much preparatory information as possible, both in regional meetings, but also in very dedicated thematic meetings and webinars to ensure that all parties and all regions, even those that might be worried about online access, that they are well supplied with the information they would need for their preparation. But what's last on the slide is just to underline again, 1st to the 5th, we will meet online for 4.1, and then in the first quarter of 22 for 4.2. And let me just add here that it is, of course, noted, and we in the planning it, and the presidency, the Indonesian presidency, knows and has seen, of course, that UNEA will meet in that quarter as well. And so our meeting, while the date hasn't been set yet, would be after that. The exact date of the meeting would be finalized at COP 4.1. This just outlines first in the beige color the preparatory meetings ahead of 4.1. First, a deep dive on budget and those matters, and then during September and October, regional opportunities, and in many of the regions also with interpretation as required and needed. We will be able to have finalized dates of that later in June, once the Bureau has concluded its deliberations on that, and we'll make them all available on our website. And then in gray, you see a number of meetings also ahead of 4.2, which also includes, and we will be having to watch all COVID measures very carefully together with the presidency, of course, and all the advice from the UN and WHO, but it is anticipated that there would be a regional face-to-face meeting preceding the actual in-person meeting to allow countries to be well prepared. Just to show you what Rolf and Monica had spoken about a bit earlier, we are extremely happy about having worked together on this report to look at the intersection of chemicals and biodiversity in very many different ways, both to inform our own understanding of where our conventions fit vis-a-vis the biodiversity agenda, but also to try to draw as much as possible in from the biodiversity agenda to understand what we can perhaps do in that regard as well. So the report, the key insights of that are launched, and the report will be going to our respective COPs. And the next slide just shows what the other study we are working on, as mentioned by Rolf and Monica, the one on chemicals and climate. So watch this space. We'll be happy to present this work soon. For any more information you would like on COP4 or any of the other work of Minamata, please visit us on our website or write to us or follow us on Twitter. Just currently on our website are, on the one hand, also the invitation to comment on the draft monitoring guidance that has been prepared, and that deadline is the 31st of May. So please feel welcome to have a look at that and help us make this the best guidance possible for Mercury. And also the call is open for comments on the reporting guidance and any other intersessional work you will find there, or just write to us or reach out to us and we shall be happy to try to give you more information. With that, Bruno, thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Claudia. And with this two presentations, we understand where we're going with our MEAs, which are an integral part of the action of multilateral answer to the problems and the issues that the world is facing in terms of chemicals and waste. And really happy to see that despite the circumstances, we are able to move a very ambitious agenda forward in both COPs. So congratulations to all. Now, work is also ongoing in the chemical and health branch of UNEP, and we're going to hear from Sandra, and just after Sandra as well, on what happens from the SAICM point of view, the strategic approach to international chemicals management. Nalini will speak. We are a little bit late, apologies for that, but I think it's worth to go through that. We still have time after that for question and answers and closing remarks, but please stay tuned. And now over to Sandra.
Thank you very much, Bruno, and thank you very much to the Gen for the invitation. So I'll present, actually it sounds a bit like a meeting and a briefing focusing on international meetings, but also on linkages. And that's quite interesting because that's the structure of the presentation that I'll give today. So I will present a snapshot of what UNEP and in particular the Chemicals and Health branch has prepared for UNEA 5.2, and I'll also cover some elements related to linkages, also to international meetings taking place in 2021 and 2022. Before doing so, I just wanted to recall UNEP's active contribution to the international meetings mentioned previously and to the convention, as well as to the Beyond 2020 process on chemicals and waste that Nalini will present further. And I was very happy to hear Rolf mention the DDT, for example. I think it's also a good illustration of UNEP's role in assisting countries in meeting their commitments to the MEAs. Another one being, for example, the work on POPs monitoring or the contribution to the Global Mercury Partnership. I'm starting with the presentation and looking back to UNEA 4 and the Global Chemicals Outlook 2 that was launched in 2019, which is telling us that basically business as usual is not an option and that the 2020 goal will not be met. So hence the call for strengthening action. That is also the title of the briefing. Next slide, please. So I will present a number of reports that UNEP has been developing or is still developing, and they are response to UNEA 3 and UNEA 4 mandates and requests. So in particular, UNEA 4/8. So UNEP has been working on a number of reports covering topics that are ranging from strengthening the science policy interface, which is highlighting the need for a science policy interface platform for chemicals and waste, and is highlighting the importance of having authoritative outputs that are policy relevant but not policy prescriptive. It's offering a screening of the qualities required for a science policy interface, as well as 3 potential options. It also goes to assessing current issues of global concern, and this is looking into chemicals and waste issues posing risks to human health and the environment. And these issues of concern are actually originating from the SAICM process and the emerging policy issues of SAICM, and from the GCO2. So this is an overall review of the status of these issues and providing a thought starter on how to identify issues of concern in the future. The third report here in the screen is covering green and sustainable chemistry. So is looking into finding a pathway for a solution. And actually there is a request from UNIA 4/8 to develop manuals on green and sustainable chemistry. You're seeing the framework manual that has been out, and it's accompanied by an executive summary, as well as a specific manual on education for green and sustainable chemistry that is under development. So this is hoping to facilitate a better understanding and provide guidance to countries and stakeholders on advancing green and sustainable chemistry and looking for innovative solutions. The last report on the slides is the upcoming Global Waste Management Outlook 2. So it will be ready for UNIA 5.2, and it's a UNEP flagship report that is providing an overview of the state of waste and waste management on a global scale, and highlighting key systematic issues and drivers of waste, providing also concrete action points on how policymakers and stakeholders can move towards environmentally sound management and environmentally sound waste management. Next slide, please. UNEA 3 actually also requested development of reports that are now out. So maybe I'll start with the last one, which is the implementation plan for towards a pollution-free planet, and that was prepared for UNEA 4. All stakeholders are encouraged to implement and act towards the implementation of this plan. The first two are the first one on pesticides and fertilizers, so highlighting current and projected production and use of pesticides and fertilizer, the lack of effective management, and is pointing to ways to minimize impact of pesticides and fertilizer, and the impacts mainly on environment and health. And the middle one is an antimicrobial resistance. And so it's a report under development looking into health and environmental impacts of antimicrobial resistance. Next slide, please. So I'm just wanted to highlight the dates for the UNEA 5.2 segment that is set to be from 28th of February to 2nd of March 2022 in Nairobi, Kenya, and also highlight that most of the reports that I've presented and activities of UNEP have been already submitted to UNEA 5.1 as a progress on implementation of resolution 4/8 on sound management of chemicals and waste. So for any further specific details, of course, I'm here for the question and answer, but you can also follow the link of these slides, and it will give a breadth of details on the activities and linkages to the reports. On the next slide, I just wanted to highlight, so that's kind of the second part of the presentation that will be also the conclusion of the presentation. The upcoming international meetings that are not necessarily solely focusing on chemicals and waste, but that would be worth having in our radar. The first one on the GEF 8 and what it is holding for chemicals and waste. So GEF 8 multilateral trust fund next 4-year funding cycle is actually under preparation, and the first meeting of its replenishment took place in April. The expected period for this GEF 8 will be from July 2022 to June 2026, and my colleagues working with the GEF have nicely highlighted that The consultation documents suggest that the GEF8 will be building on the dual GEF7 approach of an integrated programming, so aiming at transformational change and also individual focal areas. Possible programs relevant to chemicals and waste may include eliminating of harmful chemicals for supply chain, and they could be also plastic pollution, cities, or food systems. There will be the similar objective to GEF7 on enabling conditions, on prevention and elimination of harmful chemicals and waste, and on the convention support that is tremendously important as well, including the NIP, the Minamata initial assessment, effectiveness evaluation. Next slide, please, is looking into a leakages report that was requested by the intersessional process of SciChem and the Sound Management for Chemicals and Waste to assess linkages with other clusters and looking into options to coordinate and cooperate on areas of common interest. And this is highlighting 7 clusters that are here on the screen. And that links me to, maybe I'll skip the next slide to go to the following one. Exactly, thanks so much. Just to some meetings taking place this year and the high-level political forum and the clear link between chemical and waste and sustainable development and the monitoring of SDGs. The high-level political forum will be taking place in July and will look into Sustainable Development Goal 12 on, amongst other, on SCP, sustainable consumption and production, and with its close link to the chemicals SDG targets. There will be also the climate COP, and maybe I'll just highlight that UNEP is working on air quality and on having some events related to Zero Emission Vehicle Alliance on the shift to electronic mobility. Biodiversity, I think, was well covered by my colleagues from the convention, and just to say that in a joint effort, UNEP is working with them and with SciChem, the Ozone Secretariat, to engage in and provide inputs in the post-2020 global biodiversity framework, aiming at building linkages between the pollution and the nature agendas. Finally, I'll mention health and the engagement of UNEP into the One Health initiative and natural contribution to the COPs, the BRS COPs, the Minamata COPs. And one last point, the marine litter and plastic pollution agenda. So the ad hoc expert group on marine litter and microplastic concluded its work in November 2020. And the outcome will be considered at UNEA 5.2. And in the meantime, member states-driven initiatives are taking place to keep the momentum to prepare for UNEA, and UNEP is supporting them upon request. Then the last slide is our concluding messages. Maybe I'll just pick one or two in the interest of time, but Bruno, in your introductory remarks, you actually mentioned the need to transform the way we produce and the way we consume, and you mentioned changing model, and I think that most of these messages actually are echoing this, in particular adopting a system thinking, a life cycle thinking, to look at environmentally sound and innovative solutions, as well as looking into identifying and addressing issues of concern in an integrated and holistic manner. And AMR antibiotics has been booming, and AMR is a great example of how it's important to keep this balance and have a life cycle thinking and a system thinking approach in order to make sure that we recognize human health, animal health, environment are very closely related and interact, linking to each other. And that we need to draw on chemistry, on processes, on prevention and monitoring systems in this holistic manner. The other point that you highlighted in your introduction was being based on science, and hence the point here on reinforcing the science policy interface for chemicals and waste for the pollution agenda. Thank you very much again, and I'll hand over back to you.
Thanks a lot, Sandra. And let me also remind, because I forgot to say that all presentations will be put on the GEN website afterwards. And we're collecting a number of questions on the site that will be answered at the end. But really, Sandra, thanks for showing the work of the Chemical and Health Branch and where we're going. It's strong complementarity that I see as well is quite evident. And we really work as one for a better planet. And that's the case as well. I suppose what we'll hear from Nalini in a second on where are we going with SciChem and the management of chemicals internationally. Nalini, over to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you also to Dan and them to organize this, I think also very timely thing. I just wanted to give you maybe a quick update on the latest developments of the 5th session of the International Conference on Chemicals Management, so ICCM5, and as well as on the broader work of the SciChem Secretariat over the course of the last few months. As you might know, of course, we were all faced with the same situation with the ongoing travel restrictions. And as a result, the ICCM5 Bureau, in consultation with stakeholders, decided to postpone both the international process for the IP4 as well as ICCM5, which was scheduled for 2020 to 2021, and then further decided to then postpone it until face-to-face consultations can be held. I think in that sense, SciChem is a little bit unique from the other conventions where we are, in the process of adopting a new ambitious framework, and the Bureau feels that, only a face-to-face meeting where this will be possible, where effective participation of all stakeholders can take place, and therefore a decision was taken to kind of postpone these meetings indefinitely, but we hope that by early next year we'll have some ideas of in terms of dates and how we move forward. So since this decision, the Secretariat has been working closely with the Bureau and has also consulted with all stakeholders to determine a way forward and what can be done in the interim, in the intersessional process until the face-to-face can take place. Next slide, please. So while this has been an unfortunate, turn of events, the deliberations on the development of SciChem instrument on 2020 have continued. And between October 2020 and February 2021, 4 virtual working groups held discussions to support the international process. The purpose of these working groups was to develop proposals for tangible outcomes, including notes identifying gaps, possible text proposals, suggestions of alternative text as appropriate. And this was based on the documentation that was going into IP4. It is important to point out that the virtual workshops were not intended to replace any formal face-to-face discussions at IP4 or negotiations that will take place at ICCM5, but rather to given the current circumstances, build a better understanding and prepare the delegates for foreseeable negotiations. Next slide, please. So in February 2021, the first phase of the discussions were completed in this virtual setting, and some important observations were made by delegates on some key issues. And in summary, the virtual working group on targets, indicators, and milestones agreed that further deliberation is needed to develop the draft targets, incorporating a smart approach before extensive work can be dedicated towards the indicators and milestones. And here, there was a call for our colleagues in the IMC to see how they can, support this process. And I think based on their kind of current discussions and thinking, they have started using, what they have as a basis for the discussion. So we are very, very pleased that work's kind of continuing as well. Under the governance and mechanisms discussion, it was noted that each government should establish arrangements such as national plans of action and to consult with stakeholders at national level, preparation of reporting, that there's some streamlined processes in place. So that was kind of the crux of the discussion that took place there. And then there was also discussion around the science policy kind of agenda, and there was kind of unanimous decision agreement that we do need a strengthened science policy in place, and SAICM would be willing to support those discussions going forward. Around the issues of concern, and some of, I think Sandra had also mentioned the report that UNEP has prepared, so that fed into the discussions. There was a nice substantive piece of work. There was broad agreement that the emerging policy issues process has been useful in raising the profile of the areas of work globally, but then a clear action plan is needed. The discussions under the issue of concern included criteria for nomination, criteria for prioritization, selection, etc. And so further work does need to take place and discussions in order for us to get to a place where then ICC and can speak to it and discuss it in a little bit more detail. And then finally, there under the financial considerations virtual working group, the participants acknowledged the need to strengthen the integrated approach to financing for sound management of chemicals and waste, and especially on the component on private sector involvement. They also recognize that there is the need to continue the discussions around strengthening financing for the secretariat. So, and that was a proposal that was put at Bangkok at IP by Switzerland and Norway. So further discussions on that take place. Just for your information, full reports of the virtual working groups can be found on the SAICM website under the dedicated page. So please have a look at your leisure. Another key development since October last year has been the process initiated by the President of ICCM5 to develop recommendations on essential elements of a possible high-level declaration. The composition of the informal drafting group was finalized by the President, taking into account balance the region, sectors, industry, government, and gender. So this group has met now 5 times and have gone through actually 55 from governments, IGOs, civil society, academia, and other stakeholders. Their next meeting will take place on the 15th of June, and the outcome of that meeting, the discussion rather, will be made available on shortly. So look on that. Okay, so then in terms, whilst the current situation is less than ideal, the Secretariat has been encouraged by the ongoing engagement of stakeholders in the process. Last week, the Secretariat presented its 2021-2023 program of work and budget to the Bureau, which, apart from facilitating things that will take us to the negotiations at ICCM5 when in-person meetings are feasible, it also covers a second round of work or of virtual work or a set of more focused regional meetings. The second round of this virtual process will be informed by a survey on experience from the just concluded virtual process. So, and that survey will be launched in the coming weeks. So information around the survey, and we encourage all our stakeholders to actively participate in the survey so that the next virtual round can be informed with the data that we've and the findings and guidance that we get from all our different stakeholders. The program of work also envisages the continued implementation of SAICM, including enhanced work on emerging policy issues, broadening its knowledge management, as well as expanding partnerships with technical and scientific networks, and including downstream sectors, chemical intensive value chain. So, really trying to continue with implementation of the current SAICM mandate as we have it, and just that progress is being made and work is being undertaken, and especially at national level. Then thirdly, within the context of the integrated approach to financing of chemicals and waste, and in particular the third component on dedicated external financing, and I think many of us now have spoken to this, the SAICM Secretariat will work also with the GEF on the upcoming GEF 8 replenishment, as well as the special program. They've just launched the 5th round of applications, and so we'll participate actively in ensuring that our stakeholders are engaged in the process of trying to access the funding opportunities that are available, so that we can have really effective implementation of SAICM objectives. And then the proposed program of work also cooperation in related areas such as biodiversity, climate change, and resource efficiency, circularity, and which will streamline efforts, avoid duplication, increase of priority topics, and in a way bundle the resources to achieve common goals and targets. So we really look forward to working with our colleagues in the BRS, NIMATA, with the other IGOs as well, in order to ensure that there is a collective effort, our common goals and targets met. And I think that's my last slide. So visit our website and follow us on Twitter for latest information. And I would be happy to answer any questions. And of course, you can contact us if you have any questions for us, or in terms of the process and the next steps. Just for your information, all the Bureau meeting documents that are presented are available on the SAICM website, all tabs. So, and we do hope that you are that you engage actively in providing us comments and suggestions, inputs through your members, but also you can do it directly as appropriate. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Nalini, for this overview and for driving us through the processes that are ongoing indeed at the SAICM Secretariat. And I think with this, we have had a full overview of all the activity, where we stand, where we're going in the various branches or MEAs that deal with chemicals and waste in UNEP and in the big family of UNEP that includes the MEAs. We have still a bit of time, I think, for question and answers before we get closing remarks from Felix. And for this, I will turn to Malu, I think, who has followed what has happened in the chat.
Yes, hi. So we have a clarification question from Mahmoud in Pakistan, which was addressed to Claudia before, but he would like to clarify if the decisions made at the online meeting would be subject to approval at the meeting in person. Otherwise, the other comment that we have would be also from Mr. Mahmoud regarding multilateralism, that yes, he agrees on it. However, this is also subject to how the countries also make their commitments and participate. That's all we have at the moment.
Thanks a lot. I can only agree with Mahmoud that indeed the permanent call to member states is to support multilateralism. We are a secretariat and organization at the service of our member states, but we indeed live with the commitments of our member states. So definitely, I'm certain everybody would echo this. But on the other question, maybe I start with Claudia, and maybe we can have from everyone, what is the status of the decision adopted online in the different COPs?
I think the question is very important. And of course, this has been one of the number of topics that we as in our secretariat and also in discussions with other MEAs have been looking at very deeply and very sincerely. We have also had these types of questions in our discussions with bureau members and with national focal points, and there is for sure a very important element to this question. So I do not wish to sidetrack it also, but the conclusion that has come from various perspectives is that the COP is the COP, and if the COP is meeting online, it can decide to take decisions. And if the COP can meet in person, it can decide to take decisions. So we as Secretariat are very much in the hands of the COP in terms of its own ability or its own readiness to take decisions. But we do not foresee that the online segment is in any way regarded as of lesser authority than the in-person segment. So having said that, and very specifically just for Minamata, because my colleagues may want to speak rather to their instruments, but for Minamata, as I mentioned in the chat, there are only 2 decisions foreseen during the online meeting. The one is to decide and agree to meet physically at a particular date, and that would really have to be taken so that one can ensure that the conclusion part, or not only the conclusion, but the meeting part in person is set in place in all its dimensions. And the second part, or the second decision, is the one on budget and program of work. And as indicated, as it is for the Minamata Convention, the beginning of COP4 and the end of COP4 goes over 4 months and is at the beginning of our next biennium. This decision is quite pivotal and will be supported through a number of online meetings beforehand, and in many ways will take up most of the time over those 5 days. And again, we will of course be in the comfort and the hands of the parties in terms of their ability and their readiness and their comfort to take the decisions that need to be taken to ensure the operations can move forward for the year coming. I just want to add that, of course, some items in the budget also depend on new intersessional work or additional mandates or so that might only be decided in March if we are able to meet in March 2022, and those would have to be added on as necessary. So there is a small variance that would have to be taken in account in that way. I hope that's gone some way to answering this question, but I must say it's been one of those questions that those of our colleagues that are on the legal front and those that are on the political front and those that are on the governance front and anybody anyway that wants to ensure that we have a very good way of moving forward in trust and in full transparency. It's a very important question that we are trying to support our parties on as best as possible. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, thanks, Claudia. And I think that's I mean, the crucial question, and everybody is indeed following also member states' advice and legal advice. If I take the example of UNEA 5.1 online, UNEP was able to adopt its medium-term strategy, to adopt its program of work, adopt its budget, but other decisions were then postponed or put to the agenda of UNEA 5.2, where there will be a mix of physical and online meeting. Rolf, do you want to add 30 seconds? And then I want to turn to Felix, who is kindly waiting, and I know he's got a busy agenda afterwards.
I'm fine, thank you very much.
You are fine, so I suppose that's indeed similar patterns at BRS has been explained by Claudia, correct? Okay.
Yes, more or less similar.
More or less, indeed. With this, colleagues, really thanks a lot for the presentations, and let me turn to Felix, our friend from the FOR and the Swiss Federal Office for the Environment, for closing remarks. Felix, over to you.
Thank you very much, Bruno, and thank you very much, colleagues, for all the great presentations. I think it's once more a very successful Gen event that provides us with a good overview of what is going on, what is coming up. Also, congrats to the secretariats of BRSM and UNEP for providing the report and the linkage of chemical waste and biodiversity. I think it was really great to have this joint report to underline this very important topic now that the biodiversity agenda is so active and also getting much involved in the post-2020 agenda from their side. It was really a crucial and very timely moment. I think it's also good to hear now that the structure for the virtual meetings and the physical meetings is getting more clear for the COPs. That gives also some planning, security as far as is possible in these current times, but that also we as parties, we know how to get prepared and how to get ready for those meetings. I think one very important issue will be the question that has been raised by BRS and by Minamata, how to ensure a good and sound discussion of topics, in particular amendment proposals, before the physical COPs. I think we all know in normal times we meet quite a lot, quite often in the Chemicals and Waste cluster, so we have the chance also in different meetings to bring up those questions, to organize side events, to take on board concerns, to adapt it, and this is more challenging in these current times. So I think that is one key question for Minamata and BRS, how to ensure that we are able to have a sound discussion before the meetings, so how to use regional meetings, but also other forums, to enable us as parties to have pre-discussions with the COPs and then to able to negotiate them at the COP, but also make use of the time beforehand. Also, big thanks for UNEP for this very good overview of all the reports you have done. It's quite a tremendous work. Congrats to that also. I think you have outlined very important reports. And also they will also, I think, be discussed and further considered at the UNEA 5.2. I think in particular the one on the science policy, strengthening science policy interface, where you have outlined 3 options, how we could continue. I think this will be taken up to discuss at the COP, and it will be at the UNEA, and it will be a unique opportunity now at this time to really strengthen science policy interface and consider the option to have an intergovernmental panel similar to IPCC or IPBS. I think this is one option we will further discuss and also deliberate. And again, thank you very much for this good report. I think another one that we have to consider under the SciChem, but also at UNEA 5.2 is for sure the one on the issues of concerns. I think we have all heard the good news from Rolf about the DDT, about the phasing out of production. The issues of concern report outlines that we have still a lot of standing issues we have not been able to address fully now. To mention lead, arsenic and cadmium, they also have outlined some options how to address those. I think they have to be considered on the one hand under UNEA and then also from the SciChem. And perhaps a last thought from my side of the CHEF replenishment. I think it was good that we have several presentations taking this point up. We all know that the SciChem, that the CHEF is the financial mechanism for the Stockholm and the Minamata Convention, to some extent also for the SciChem. We have seen the documents so far provided by the CHEF Secretariat for the replenishment discussions. So on the one hand, we have a focus area on chemicals and waste, very specific, and then we have the integrated programs where they also address chemical issues, but also interlinkages, for example, to biodiversity. And I think it will be a great opportunity for the secretariats of the conventions and also UNEP chemicals to bring US actors together and try to also bring forward again the importance of this pollution crisis we are facing and to see how the CHEF can respond. So I think again, what you have done on the biodiversity, it's also the linkage of chemical waste to biodiversity, also very helpful to do it here under the CHEF to bring forward the general linkages between chemicals and waste and the other clusters, but also within the chemicals and waste cluster. So not only to lobby that Minamata and Stockholm get sufficient funds, but also the entire cluster, because directly, indirectly, also other conventions and work stream can benefit from the replenishment process. So closing with that, again, thanks to everybody, thanks you to Bruno and your team from the GEN to organizing this briefing, and looking forward to see you colleagues next time virtually, and then also hopefully as soon as possible physically. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Felix. And indeed, let's hope that in not such a distant future, we can, with good health and social distance and measures in place and all conditions respected, we can meet physically indeed. This concludes this briefing. I know that there are still many questions that have been asked that we didn't have time to address in the Q&A, but Diana confirms that we will address them. We will give answers on the GEN website, so your questions are not lost. On the contrary, we will provide answers. The colleagues will provide answers, and you will find them on the GEN website, which is a website you should always look at when you want to know what is happening on the environment, and especially the links with International Geneva. I thank you very much, all colleagues, panelists, and all those who attended the meeting. Merci beaucoup. Je termine avec quelques mots en français et je vous souhaite une très bonne journée et déjà bientôt le week-end qui arrive. Donc, bonne continuation à tous et à bientôt.
And just to add, before saying goodbye to those who are still online with us, that it has been mentioned at the beginning of the briefing, World Environment Day is coming very soon. It's happening next week. So there will be various events also proposed at the global level, but also in Geneva. And we will be with you for a special session on nature-based solutions and ecosystems restoration, which is the topic of this year, World Environment Day, on the 7th of June. But there will be a few other things happening before 7th of June. And just also wanted to add that some of the reports that have been mentioned by Sandra have already been presented in the context of the GEN. There is one of the reports that she mentioned on pesticides and fertilizers will be presented by Gamini at our upcoming Wednesday for the Planet. I think it's on the 9th of June. And we stand ready to present the other reports that are in preparation at the upcoming events. And thank you all for joining us and for the panelists for being delivering very well their messages today.